The emergency HOA meeting felt like a tribunal designed by someone who'd learned about justice from watching courtroom dramas on afternoon television. Folding chairs scattered across the community center like refugees from a church bake sale, a rickety podium that wobbled more than a drunk penguin, and lighting that made everyone look like they were auditioning for a zombie movie. But the real entertainment was standing at that wobbly podium. Sharon, call me Chairwoman Patterson, gripped her gavel like Thor's hammer, her face the color of a fire engine, having an existential crisis. Her helmet of artificially blonde hair defied both gravity and good taste, and her voice could shatter glass from 3 counties away. "This is highway robbery," she shrieked, waving a stack of papers like battle flags. "A 400% increase in HOA fees is absolutely unconscionable." I sat in the back row, arms crossed, wearing the kind of smile that usually preceded someone's entire world falling apart. The room was packed with my neighbors' 43 families who'd spent the last year watching Sharon Patterson turn our peaceful lakefront community into her personal dictatorship. What Sharon didn't know, what nobody in this room knew except my lawyer and the county clerk, was that I'd just become the majority owner of Willowbrook Lake, all 847 acres of it, including the water rights, fishing rights, and recreational access rights that our entire community had been using for free for the past 15 years. But let me back up. Let me tell you how Sharon Patterson managed to turn a simple swim in my own backyard into the most expensive mistake of her life. 1 year ago, I'd been floating on my back in the crystal clear waters of Willowbrook Lake, watching clouds drift across the summer sky like lazy thoughts. My house sat on the prime lot, 3 acres of lakefront property that I'd inherited from my grandfather along with his environmental consulting business. That's when Sharon Patterson had appeared on my dock like a harbinger of suburban doom. "Excuse me," she'd called out, her voice cutting through the peaceful afternoon like a chainsaw through silk. "You can't swim there." I'd stood up in the waist-deep water, confused. "I'm sorry." "What?" "Section 15.7 of the Community Covenants," she'd announced, pulling out her phone to take pictures of me like I was some sort of lake monster. "No swimming in the lake between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. Quiet hours for the fish. Quiet hours for the fish." "I wish I was making this up, Sharon," I'd said patiently. "I'm swimming in front of my own house, on my own property. The lake is community property," she'd replied with the confidence of someone who'd never actually read the property deeds. "As HOA chairwoman, I have the authority to enforce all community standards." That should have been my first clue that Sharon had no idea what she was talking about. Sharon Patterson had been elected HOA chairwoman 6 months earlier, not because anyone particularly wanted her in charge, but because she was the only person willing to run after the previous board had collectively resigned in frustration. She'd treated the position like a promotion from suburban housewife to benevolent dictator of a small nation. Our first official clash had come 2 weeks after the swimming incident, when Sharon had decided that my grandfather's old fishing boat was an eyesore that violated community aesthetic standards. "The boat has to go," she'd announced during a board meeting, pointing at a photo she'd taken with what appeared to be a telephoto lens. "It's not in keeping with the upscale image we're trying to maintain. It's a classic 1970s Chris Craft." I'd replied, "It's worth more than most cars in this neighborhood. It's old and it's ugly." Sharon had shot back, "This is a premium lakefront community, not a marina." I'd pulled out my phone and shown her the boat's insurance appraisal. "It's worth $45,000, Sharon. And it's moored at my private dock." That's when I'd seen it, that flash of pure rage that crossed her face whenever someone challenged her authority. Sharon Patterson didn't like being told she was wrong, especially not in front of an audience. "We'll see about that," she'd muttered, making notes on her ever-present clipboard. What followed was 12 months of escalating warfare disguised as community standards enforcement. First came the landscaping violations. Apparently, my native wildflower garden was unkempt and detrimental to property values. Never mind that it was a carefully planned ecosystem that attracted butterflies and prevented erosion. Sharon wanted manicured grass and geometric hedges like everyone else. Then came the dock infractions. My dock was too long, then too short, then the wrong color. Sharon had apparently appointed herself the unofficial dock inspector general, measuring and photographing my property with the dedication of a crime scene investigator. But Sharon's masterpiece was the excessive recreational vehicle complaints. My kayak, stored neatly beside my dock, was apparently a commercial vessel that violated residential's owning standards. Each complaint was meticulously documented, stamped with official HOA letterhead, and sent to every resident in the community. Sharon was building a case for ... something. I just couldn't figure out what ... until last month. When she'd finally shown her hand, the $1,000 fine notice had arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by certified mail with the pomp and circumstance of a court summons. The violation: unauthorized use of community recreational facilities during restricted hours. The attached photo showed me swimming in the lake at 3:47 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon. Swimming in my own backyard. I'd called Sharon immediately. Sharon, you can't fine me for swimming in front of my own house. The lake is community property. She'd replied with the smugness of someone who'd never actually researched property law. The HOA has the right to regulate its use. Show me the deed, I'd said. I don't need to show you anything, she'd shot back. I'm the chairwoman. My word is law. My word is law. That's when I'd realized Sharon Patterson had completely lost touch with reality. That's also when I decided to teach her a lesson about who actually owned what. The research had taken me 3 weeks and cost me $2,000 in legal fees. But what I discovered was pure gold. Willowbrook Lake wasn't community property. It wasn't even owned by the HOA. The entire lake, all 847 acres of it, was owned by a defunct corporation called Willowbrook Development LLC, which had gone bankrupt in 2008 and never properly transferred the assets. The property had been sitting in legal limbo for 15 years, with the county collecting minimal taxes and nobody paying attention to the actual ownership. Nobody except me. My environmental consulting business had given me access to property databases, water rights records, and environmental impact studies that most people didn't even know existed. Within a week, I'd traced the ownership chain back to its source and discovered that Willowbrook Development LLC owed exactly $3,247 in back taxes. For $3,247, I could buy an entire lake. The county was thrilled to get the property off their books. The paperwork was processed in record time, and suddenly I owned the body of water that our entire community had been treating as a public resource. But I wasn't done yet. The real genius had been in the fine print. When Willowbrook Development LLC had originally created the community, they'd granted perpetual recreational access to the lake for all residents. But they'd also included a clause that allowed the lake owner to charge reasonable fees for maintenance and environmental protection. What constituted reasonable fees? Well, that was up to the discretion of the owner. And as the new owner, I decided that reasonable fees for lake access were $5,000 per household per year. The letters had gone out yesterday. 43 families, each receiving a bill for $5,000. Annual lake access fees, payable within 30 days. Sharon had called an emergency meeting within hours, which brought us to tonight's circus, with Sharon standing at the podium like a general whose army had just realized they'd been fighting on the wrong side. This is extortion, she continued, her voice reaching frequencies that probably violated noise ordinances. Daniel Morrison can't just buy a lake and hold us hostage. I stood up slowly, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. Actually, Sharon, I can. And I did. I pulled out a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. Complete ownership. Transfer. Filed with the county clerk 3 days ago. Willowbrook Lake is now my property. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Sharon's face went through several interesting color changes, red to white to green to a shade of purple I'd never seen on a human being. That's impossible, she stammered. Is it? I walked to the front of the room, my footsteps echoing like a drumbeat. You spent a year telling everyone that the lake was community property. You fined me $1,000 for swimming in what you claimed was a shared resource. You appointed yourself the lake police. I turned to address the room full of neighbors. But here's the thing about property law, Sharon. Words have meaning. Ownership has consequences. And when you try to fine someone for using their own property, you might want to make sure you actually know who owns what. I placed the deed on the podium, right next to Sharon's stack of fake violation notices. Every fine you've issued for lake-related violations over the past year has been fraudulent. Every regulation you've tried to enforce has been meaningless. You've been playing sheriff of someone else's property. Sharon's hands were shaking as she picked up the deed, her eyes scanning the legal language like someone trying to read Sanskrit. This can't be legal, she whispered. It's not just legal, Sharon. It's poetic. I smiled, savoring the moment. You wanted to charge me $1,000 for swimming in my own lake. So now I'm charging everyone $5,000 for the privilege of existing near it. The room was dead silent. Sharon looked around desperately, searching for support from neighbors who were suddenly very interested in studying their shoes. But you can't do this, she pleaded. People have been using this lake for 15 years, and they can keep using it, I replied cheerfully. For $5,000 a year, per household. That's the going rate for private lake access in this area. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. I've already had 3 real estate investors call about buying lakefront lots. Apparently, owning your own lake is quite the selling point. Sharon's face crumpled like a paper bag in a rainstorm. What do you want? She asked, her voice barely audible. I want you to resign as HOA chairwoman, I said simply. I want all the fraudulent fines you've issued to be voided. I want a formal apology to every resident you've harassed over the past year. And I want you to admit that you have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to property law. I paused, letting the weight of her situation sink in. Do that, and I'll consider reducing the lake access fees to something more reasonable. Sharon looked around the room one more time, seeing nothing but angry faces and empty chairs where her supporters used to sit. I resign, she whispered. The applause was immediate and thunderous. As the crowd began to disperse, Sharon approached me with the expression of someone who just realized they'd been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. How much will you reduce the fees? She asked quietly. I smiled, packing up my papers. Well, Sharon, since you're no longer an HOA member, your house is getting foreclosed on next month according to the county records. I don't think you need to worrying about lake access fees anymore. Her face went white. How did you, environmental consulting, in just about water quality, Sharon? It's about doing your research before you pick a fight. I walked toward the door, then turned back for one final moment. Oh, and Sharon, feel free to swim in the lake anytime you want. Just remember, it's my lake now. Sometimes the best revenge is simply knowing what you own.